Pre-written campaigns, who needs them? Certainly not you, not after this video. Whatever your reason may be, you've decided to write your own campaign, or at least hear how I think you should write your own campaign. Maybe you've played them all. Maybe you've just got so much creative, big brain energy you can't hold it all in. Or maybe you're just tired of paying for pre-written content. Whatever your reason is, you've come to the right place. If you ask 10 different game masters how to homebrew a campaign, you're gonna get 10 different answers. This is only my take, so warm up those big, beautiful noggins and warm up your favorite pin nub. Nubs and noggins, it's gonna be a hit. It's my new favorite role-playing game. And get ready to create a custom campaign from scratch for those who deserve it the least, your players. Let's roll. Every time. Love that intro. What a rush. To any first-time GMs out there checking this out, I wish I could travel back in time and slap myself for ever considering homebrewing my very first session and my very first campaign, which I did, and trust me, it can be a lot. So my advice would be to run a few pre-written one-shots before you delve into these choppy waters, because the waves are high and the maintenance is higher. Additionally, you may not want to write your campaign story out as far as I'm going to get into this video. A lot of GMs just want to start with a simple session 1 of the adventures kicking some skeletons and seeing where that goes. There's really no right way to do it, and the only measure of success in these games is if you're having fun or not. Now that I've got you good and discouraged, let's get cracking. What the heck is a homebrew campaign anyway? Well, it's right there in the name. It's a campaign custom brewed by the greatest mind ever seen in the gaming community. Yours. You'll be creating a custom story from big to small, from front to back, with as few plot holes as is humanly possible. Creating your own homebrew campaign can be very satisfying most of the time. But where to start? Here are just a few tips on how to create your very own homebrew campaign. Okay, more than just a few tips. When you set out to create your own homebrew campaign, you're gonna start at the very top with the 30,000 foot view of what this thing really looks like. And it's gonna have this sort of trickle down effect. The first things that we talk about are going to define everything else that we do. So let's talk about the most important thing first, the setting. What does the world you'll be playing in look like? What themes do you want to explore? I, for instance, always lean toward horror. I'm a real spooky guy, but it doesn't have to be binary. You can choose as many as you like from a list of genres, or you can single it down to one. But this decision has to be made first and foremost because it is going to define every other decision that we make for our campaign. Here are just a few to choose from. Action, adventure, comedy, crime, drama, high fantasy, low fantasy, high seas, horror, mystery, political intrigue, horror, romance, horror, science fiction, did I mention horror yet? Thriller, and westerns. For the sake of the rest of this video and the next few exercises that we're gonna do, I'm gonna have to choose some themes. Don't worry, I'll get out of my horror rut, I guess, for once. Let's say that we want our campaign to have high fantasy and westerns. I would be beside myself if I didn't mention this at this point in our planning. It is always a good idea to get your players involved at this stage of your planning. Ask them what kind of themes they would like to explore. This can be easily remedied and taken care of with a session 0. Now, what the heck is a session 0, you might be asking, or perhaps you just need a little brush up on it. Have no fear, horror! I have already done a fully comprehensive video on how to host the perfect session 0, and I'll link it at the end of this very video. Whatever system you're playing surely already has a canonical world built into it full of pantheons, full of bustling cities, full of dangerous monster wastelands, full of little villages with stupid shopkeepers who your party will never stop talking about and want to take along on their journey.
Hello.
Are you thinking of building your own world? Well, you're an overachiever, and world building is a video all unto itself. And I've got good news for you. I'm going to be doing a world building video in the future. Is now a good time to ask you to subscribe to stay up to date? The good news about picking the place this happens in is we've already done a lot of the work without ever even looking at a map. We know that we want our campaign to have Western themes, so we're likely going to pick a place that borders a desert. If nothing else, you can just throw a dart at the map, and there is no shame in using ye old Google, and don't worry, I won't tell anyone. In case you haven't caught on yet, my particular system of choice is Dungeons and Dragons. So let's look at an official Dungeons and Dragons map together. Knowing that I want a Western campaign, I'm gonna look for somewhere near a desert so that it can help enhance that Western theme. Here's a cool desert, and I spot a city just outside of it that looks really interesting. It's called Ormpur. I don't know much about it, but I like the variety of landscapes that surround it, and that opens up a lot of cool possibilities. If you're wanting to run a sandbox campaign, you're on your own, sister. But just like that, we have a starting location and a place where this campaign can start. So, we have a destination, and we know how we want our campaign to feel. All that's left to do now is write the entire thing. Simple, right? Well, it's actually a lot simpler than people think. What makes a story, well, a story? The answer is actually pretty simple and straightforward. Narrative and conflict. Now, you're going to be tempted to write this entire thing out from beginning to end, but you're gonna have to resist that temptation. What we're gonna do is come up with a few villains and start off with a first session with those things in mind. Tabletop role-playing games are collaborative storytelling experiences, so you have to give your players room to have agency within the worlds that you are writing. Otherwise, you might as well just be reading them a book that you wrote. Approaching it like this is going to allow your players to directly impact the narrative session to session, which does mean that a lot of the writing that happens for your campaign is going to happen in between those individual sessions of play. But we still have to do a little bit of writing to get it set up. We want to keep in mind our themes. They're going to hold our hand and guide our way all the way through this perfect story that our players are going to remember for the rest of their lives. So let's lean into our Western theme. I'm giving up on this thing. It's going down forever. Say goodbye to that thing forever, folks. As I was saying, we know that we want to have some high fantasy themes, but in most of these systems, in worlds that are full of monsters and magic, that's going to be pretty easy to come by. So let's stick to our guns and think about the Western theme. This next exercise is easily plugged into whatever theme that you choose. But we're going to take that theme that we have in mind and heart for our campaign, and we're going to think of some classic plot hooks for it. Mine being Western, gold seems like an obvious choice. Compromised water supplies, bounties, industrialization, the taking of lands from native peoples, maybe finding a city that's buried beneath the sand. That's a pretty cool one. Outlaw gangs and their impact on the city that the game is starting in. You get the idea. There are a lot. Don't worry if you didn't think of a bunch of different plot hooks in the short span of time that I just did. I got a secret for you. I script these bad boys out. Let yourself ruminate and let that big, beautiful brain have a little bit of space so that you can come up with an extra delicious story that you and your players will enjoy. Now, what's really awesome here is you don't have to choose one of the plot hooks that we just came up with. You can use all of the plot hooks that we just came up with. You starting to smell what I'm cooking here? You starting to figure out how this whole thing's coming together? You got yourself a proper wad of story points. But the plot hook that really rubbed me the wrong way was the taking of native lands from peoples. I also really liked the city beneath the sand, so let's say that our yet-to-be-named big bad guy is using one of those as a means for the other. And just like that, we got a motive. There it is, on the table, right in front of us. And keep in mind that every encounter doesn't have to be a part of some big, perfectly organized evil plan. But let's talk about a few high fantasy plots while we're here. Some regular ones would be the powerful overlord, the reluctant hero, a secret heir, a powerful mentor who's on their way out and needs to share their secrets with someone or with the world. And of course, as I mentioned above, a powerful, mysterious artifact. All right, time to tie it all together with a nice little bow. I mentioned the Gem of Power. I mentioned the city buried in the sand. I mentioned the taking of lands from native people. And I mentioned one big bad villain. So let's tie them all together. What is beneath the sands in this forgotten and buried city? Could it be a gem of power? And is the only way to get access to it that our villain has to take away the lands from native peoples? And how are they convincing others that this is a good idea? While I'm here brewing up a really cool villain, I also want to keep in mind that I don't want it to be all Western. So to introduce a little bit of high fantasy back into it, I'm going to plug in a few dragon baddies. We know what themes we're after. We know what our main antagonist wants. We've got conflict. We've got story. We've got setting. We've got it all. Now we just have to bring it to life. And here I just want to remind you, it's always a good idea not to overwrite your story. But who exactly is this main antagonist and why are they such an asshole? We know what they want: to take the land from native people, which they will do by any means necessary, to acquire a gem of power. But what do they think the Gem of Power does? And why do they want it so badly? Well, okay, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I'm bringing this up again because it's important. Lean on your themes. Western and high fantasy? I'm thinking a robbery in the desert will lead a lowly thief to greater heights. Many years ago, maybe a gang robbed a trading caravan. The robbery was bloody and lives were lost on both sides. The caravan was heavily armed and also had passengers who paid to take it. People know that a local notorious gang did the robbery, but they don't know that one of the boys in the gang pocketed something that wasn't his. A wizard who was studying taboo secrets had an extensive spell book, we're getting into the high fantasy part right now, with other notes on his studies. And one particularly interesting section included detailed notes on a gem of power said to be lost in the desert itself. The boy found power in the magic that he learned in this book. He also bought social standing with all of the money that he stole. And just recently, he found where he truly believed the location of this gem to be. Ooh, oh man, I gave myself goosebumps. That's pretty good. But a boy needs a name. Let's call him, I don't know. We could just look up something for Magic Stealer. Please forgive me for the pronunciation of what I'm about to say to you. But Magic Stealer roughly translates into Magic K Furrinter. Magic K is a pretty bad first name, but Furrinter, now that's a cool last name, and Martin's kind of close to magic, so Martin Furrinter sounds like a very cool name for a very motivated villain. Everything's starting to come together, am I right? Can you feel it? Who's the gang? Who's in the gang? Who led the caravan? And who was that passenger that Martin stole the book from? What's the bounty on the gang currently? What kind of law upholds that bounty and punishes those criminals? All of these answers are places and NPCs that you get to come up with. And don't overthink it, just have some fun with it. I walked through the main antagonist creation, but let's not get too carried away. Take some time to fill in all of those holes. Sprinkle in some of those encounters that we mentioned before, and oh my gods, wah freaking la! You've got yourself a bona fide campaign, partner. But wait, there's one more step. Ah, yes. the players. The undeserving swine who get to witness all of the majesty that your amazing mind has cooked up for their pleasure, though they do not deserve to witness its splendor. We need to answer a few questions here. Mainly, how are they involved? The players are truly the reason that we write these things. A small world and a story, all theirs to help tell and explore, but we have to get them to sink their teeth into it. You always want the bad guy hinted at almost immediately. Perhaps the first task that the players are given are by none other than Martin Furenter himself. And maybe it's to investigate the very gang that he used to be a part of. Now, there's something that's swell. At this point in his life in the town, he could be regarded as well-to-do, knowing that he bought influence and power with the money that he stole. But once the gang is found in this first encounter, maybe the gang finds out that the party was sent by Martin, and they start to divulge a few rumors, a little bit of juicy gossip. And just like that, the players are questioning Martin more than they might have already, because players never trust NPCs, and that's your fault and my fault. You don't want to write out too much, because you never, ever know what your players are going to take interest in, on what they're going to chase after. I usually write the end goals of the main antagonist and the initial setup, and after that, I just keep in mind what the main antagonist is doing and what I'd like my players to experience in the encounters that we mentioned before. If you write out too much, the players won't have any real influence over the world, and trust me when I say they will be able to tell. You'll be surprised how many hooks your players come up with and how inspired you'll get through their play and the collaborative storytelling that you do with them as their game master. Look at you, all ready to write a campaign and making me so proud. I think I'm gonna cry. The best advice I can leave you with is to have fun with it. If you're loving digging into and creating cities, go for it. If that seems like too much work, forget about it. Let it breathe and enjoy yourself. And this is important. Don't rush the story. There's no reason to rush. There's no reason to be a perfectionist. You aren't getting paid for this. And if you are, well, that's your own fault. But a story, as seen here, builds organically upon itself if you know where to start, and now you do. You're welcome. If you think I forgot anything, please say so in the comments below. And if you write a campaign with the help of this video, please, 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 please let me know in the comments below. I want to know all about it. I want to know everything. Good luck out there. Know I believe in you, and that I'm jealous I don't get to play at your table. I know your campaign's gonna be incredible. If you like what you see here, please take just a second right now. This second, it takes less time than this sentence is taking me to say, to like and subscribe to my channel. Plus, it makes me feel really nice. Thanks for your continued support and for joining me on yet another What the Heck.